And just one more from me, Beterbiev Bivol, the rematch. What a great fight that is in Saudi.
Yeah.
How do you see that playing out, Saudi?
It's gonna be a really good fight again. Both are great fighters, and
Do you see yourself fighting a light heavyweight again?
Canelo is now training with Bivol. The sight of the Mexican superstar working alongside the man who handed him his most decisive loss has sent shockwaves through the boxing world. There's no official statement on why, no grand announcement, just the undeniable fact that Canelo Alvarez, the undisputed king of the super middleweight division, is moving in ways that suggest his business at light heavyweight is far from finished.
Artur, how old were you when you first walked to a gym?
9, 10.
So with you, it's over 20 years.
Yeah.
And with you, it's 20 years as well, nearly 20 years. Or
28 years.
Yeah, so long, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an intriguing development, one that arrives at a moment when the light heavyweight division is on the verge of crowning its undisputed champion for the second time in just a few months. Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol are set to run it back on February 22nd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with all 4 belts on the line. Their first fight was a brutal, tactical war that ended in a majority decision for Beterbiev, making him the first fully unified 175-pound champion in over 2 decades. But not everyone agreed with the verdict. Many believed Bivol had done enough to win, his crisp counters and masterful footwork keeping Beterbiev from imposing his usual brand of destruction. It was close, and now they meet again with the stakes somehow even higher.
Fight that I thought could have gone either way, but you know, what happens, happens. However it goes, nobody won nor lost the fight by 4 points, so that's ridiculous.
Canelo, like the rest of the boxing world, has been watching closely. He weighed in on the rematch in an interview with Fight Hub TV, careful not to pick a side. "It's gonna be a really good fight again. Both are great fighters," he said, keeping his response neutral, perhaps because he's still measuring his own future against what happens in Riyadh. This isn't just any fight with him. He's fought one of these men before, and the result is still a blemish on his otherwise legendary career. In May 2022, Canelo moved up to light heavyweight to challenge Bivol for the WBA title.
I'd prefer if we have a couple of rounds more.
15 rounds?
Yeah.
Old school?
Yeah.
But you told me you're not a student of boxing, but now you're talking about 15 rounds.
Yeah, but because I'm not a good boxer, I need more rounds.
Because you need more rounds to improve.
At the time, he was seemingly untouchable, riding high off his complete takeover of the super middleweight division. But Bivol was no Kovalev. He wasn't an aging veteran with vulnerabilities to exploit. He was a prime, disciplined technician who refused to be drawn into Canelo's game. That night, Bivol controlled the pace, absorbed Canelo's best shots without ever looking hurt, and boxed his way to a clear, unanimous decision win. It wasn't a wipeout, but it was decisive enough that there was no controversy. Bivol was simply the better man that night.
This is my final thoughts. The guy was walking the other guy, hurting him and knocking him around the ring, going to get him, hurt him, countered him, hurt him. Look at the replay. So one time Bivol walked him down, he was hurt and rocked. Listen, boxing got to be that. It got to turn into a sport where the person hurting the other guy and knocking him around the ring is the one who's winning.
After that loss, Canelo returned to 168, defending his undisputed crown, while Bivol continued his reign at light heavyweight. But even as Canelo dominated his division, there was always the lingering question, would he ever go back? Could he rewrite that chapter? When asked if he was still interested in returning to 175, he didn't dismiss it. "Maybe I will," he said, keeping the possibility alive. And now, with him training alongside Bivol, that maybe is starting to look a lot more serious. But what does this mean? Training with Bivol could be a strategic move, an opportunity to learn from the man who beat him, to dissect the details of that loss and rebuild a better approach. Or it could be something even bigger, an early step toward another light heavyweight campaign, maybe even a front row seat to study Bivol before another potential rematch. It's not unheard of for fighters to train with former opponents, but it's certainly rare when the stakes are still this high. If Canelo truly has his sights on 175 again, then what happens between Beterbiev and Bivol on February 22nd could directly shape his next move. That fight, just 4 months after their first meeting, has all the makings of another classic. Beterbiev remains boxing's most ruthless finisher, a machine of destruction who has stopped every opponent he's ever faced. He has the kind of power that can break men's wills, an ability to systematically dismantle even the toughest challengers. But Bivol is the one fighter who has shown he can handle that level of aggression without folding. He frustrated Beterbiev early in their first fight, using lateral movement and quick counters to keep him from settling into his rhythm. The later rounds saw Beterbiev finally break through, making just enough of an impact to sway the judges in his favor. But with how close it was, the rematch feels like an entirely different equation. Bivol now knows what it takes to go 12 rounds with Beterbiev, just as he once knew what it took to handle Canelo. If he can make the right adjustments, keep Beterbiev from building momentum, and avoid getting drawn into a firefight, he could reclaim his belts and regain the position he once held as the most dominant force in the division. But that's a big if. Beterbiev, at 39 years old, knows his time is limited. He won't want to leave any doubt this time, and that could make him even more dangerous.
I don't care what happened before. I just new fight, a new challenge.
Let me ask you this. When you are not on camera, do you shake hands and smile and joke? Do you? No?
No.
Will you shake hands for me today?
For Canelo, the outcome could mean everything. If Bivol wins, a rematch might become inevitable. Their first fight had no rematch clause, and Bivol made it clear afterward that he wasn't interested in running it back at 175. He wanted Canelo to come up to cruiserweight if he wanted revenge. But if Bivol becomes undisputed, the dynamics could change. Canelo chasing all 4 belts at light heavyweight would be a storyline too massive to ignore. If Beterbiev wins again, however, the equation shifts. A Canelo versus Beterbiev fight would be a completely different kind of challenge. A battle against raw power, against a fighter who breaks men down and leaves them questioning their will to fight.
Like my brother, okay? But I think Bivol win more than 2 rounds more. I don't know why the result like this, but in my opinion, I will focus and I will try to do the rematch.
Either way, Canelo training with Bivol means something. It's not random, and it's not without purpose. If Bivol defeats Beterbiev in their rematch, the path to a second fight with Canelo Alvarez suddenly becomes clearer. But standing in the way is a relentless, unforgiving force, Artur Beterbiev. Eddie Hearn, always with an eye on the biggest possible fights, has made it clear that if Bivol wins, Canelo will have every reason to pursue him. The lure of undisputed status at 175 is massive, and the idea of avenging his 2022 loss while collecting all 4 belts is the kind of challenge that could tempt the Mexican icon. But there's an undeniable reality in play. Bivol, for all his skill, looked drained and almost desperate in the final moments of the first fight with Beterbiev. If he doesn't correct that, February 22nd could end in a far more definitive loss.
10 seconds.
The way Beterbiev hunted him down in the championship rounds of their last fight was something rarely seen in a Bivol bout. Bivol, normally composed and in control, looked rattled under the pressure. Beterbiev didn't just win those rounds. He imposed his will, forcing Bivol into survival mode. That's the kind of dominance that doesn't just win fights, it leaves lasting effects. If Beterbiev smells blood earlier in the rematch, he might not let Bivol off the hook this time. And if that happens, all talk of a Bivol-Canelo rematch goes up in smoke.
Which fight was more difficult between Mayweather or Bivol, and why?
I think both are similar. Just Bivol is bigger, so I think Bivol.
Canelo himself has stayed quiet about Beterbiev, which is telling. He's never been one to avoid a challenge, but there's a clear difference between taking on Bivol, a precision-based, methodical fighter, and standing in front of a wrecking ball like Beterbiev. The risks in a Beterbiev fight are significantly greater. It's not just about losing, it's about how a loss could happen. Beterbiev doesn't outpoint opponents, he breaks them. Canelo has never been stopped, but a fight with Beterbiev would be an entirely different level of physical punishment.
I'm very happy if this fight happened in professional because, you know, I believe I can give him something in professional. I can give him very good fight.
This is why Hearn continues to push the Bivol rematch. If Bivol wins, the narrative shifts. Suddenly, it's a battle for legacy, for redemption. Canelo has already conquered the super middleweight division. There's nothing left to prove there. And with David Benavidez moving up to 175, that potential fight loses some of its urgency. Terence Crawford remains an option, but at 168, the size difference would make it a hard sell for fans who saw Crawford dismantle Errol Spence but recognize the danger of a massive weight jump. That leaves Bivol, and this time, it wouldn't just be for one belt, it would be for everything.
When I was a kid, my father didn't like my fights. Even I made a good fight. My coaches didn't like them for 100%. And I got this habit because it helps you to improve, yeah. If you see some...
But there's one problem. The first fight wasn't even close. Canelo had moments of success, particularly early, but by the second half of the fight, Bivol was in full control. If anything, Bivol eased up toward the end, respecting Canelo's power enough not to take unnecessary risks. A rematch wouldn't be any easier. If Bivol gets past Beterbiev, it means he's proven he can handle power, pressure, and adversity at the highest level. That doesn't bode well for Canelo, who would be coming back up to 175 after another long stretch at super middleweight.
What were your thoughts as it was unfolding?
I think it is at least for Bivol, for the two fighters like my brother, okay?
The physicality of it can't be ignored. Bivol was simply too big, too strong, and too disciplined for Canelo the first time around. Nothing has changed. If a rematch were to happen, Canelo would need to bring something completely different, whether that's a change in strategy, a shift in physical preparation, or an entirely new approach to handling Bivol's size and reach. Otherwise, it's hard to see a different outcome. There's also the financial angle. A Canelo-Bivol rematch would undoubtedly sell, but would it be as massive as other potential fights? That depends on how the rematch with Beterbiev plays out. If Bivol dominates, the appeal grows. If he scrapes by, fans might not be as interested in seeing a fight they already watched Canelo lose decisively, and if he loses, the conversation is over entirely.
Who do you think is favored in the rematch if they run it back right away?
I think the rematch is more 50-50 than what I considered before this fight.
That's the tricky part for Hearn. He's selling a fight that might not even exist, hoping that Bivol can do what no one has done, beat Beterbiev convincingly.
Because anything less than that, and there's no momentum for a rematch with Canelo. Canelo hasn't forgotten the loss, and he hasn't ruled out another run at 175. But everything hinges on February 22nd. If Bivol gets through it, the rematch talk gets serious. If he doesn't, it's back to square one. And that might be exactly why Canelo is training with Bivol right now. He's not just watching the division, he's positioning himself for whatever happens next.
I think about rematch, we should ask boxing fans, do they want this rematch? Yes. If they want...
Benavidez won't just be watching the Beterbiev Bivol rematch out of curiosity. His own future could be tied to its outcome. The collision between Beterbiev and Bivol is the biggest fight at 175 pounds, but Benavidez is forcing his way into that conversation with brute force. His upcoming showdown with David Morell is more than just a title fight. It's his official arrival in the division. Winning would immediately put him in the title picture, and with the WBC making it a final eliminator, he could find himself standing across the ring from the Beterbiev Bivol winner before the end of the year.
I thought Bivol won that fight, to be honest with you. It was a close fight. It could have went. Couldn't win either way. I feel like Bivol won most of the rounds. He controlled most of the rounds, and his combination punching was better.
Do you think he wins the rematch?
I think he does.
Yeah. Is it different, or do you think it's more?
I mean, I don't know.
It's a dangerous move for Benavidez, but danger is what he thrives on. Staying at 168 was never going to satisfy him for long. The frustration of being avoided, particularly by Canelo Alvarez, pushed him to seek bigger challenges. And now he has one in Morell, a technically skilled, dangerous opponent who will test just how well Benavidez's power translates to the light heavyweight division. But it's not just power that will be tested. Benavidez has built his reputation on relentless pressure, overwhelming volume, and the ability to break opponents down over time. That strategy has worked at 168, but against the elite at 175, he'll have to prove he can take as much as he gives. Bivol and Beterbiev are different beasts entirely. One a masterful tactician, the other a wrecking machine. If Benavidez can't physically impose himself on Morell, it's hard to see him doing so against the winner of the division's biggest fight.
Let's go. Let's go. Power. Power. 10. Come on! 3 more! 4, yes!
That's why this February is so crucial. Benavidez isn't just stepping up in weight, he's positioning himself as the next dominant force. If he beats Morell convincingly, the pressure for a title shot will be impossible to ignore. The WBC, which already seems to favor him, would have every reason to push for him to challenge the winner of Beterbiev Bivol. And that's where things get interesting. Benavidez believes Bivol won their first fight. He's not alone in that assessment, but it also gives insight into where his mind is. If he's expecting Bivol to get it right in the rematch, that means he sees something exploitable in Beterbiev. And if he's gunning for Bivol, that means he's confident he can handle the style that gave Canelo fits.
I want a revenge. I want to be winner. I want to win him. But I mean that I lost and I don't like it. I want to win.
Of course, what he wants and what happens are two different things. Beterbiev, despite being 39 years old, has never shown real signs of slowing down. If anything, his ability to hunt Bivol down late in their first fight proves that his stamina and power carry deep into fights. If he does the same in the rematch, there won't be any more doubts about who the best light heavyweight in the world is. And if that happens, Benavidez might find himself rethinking just how eager he is to fight the Russian wrecking ball.
So we already know each other, and I'm in a new phase. I didn't lose before, but now I want a revenge.
But Benavidez is wired differently. He wants the biggest fights, and he believes he can beat anyone. If he handles Morell the way he handled previous opponents, he'll be calling out whoever holds the belts at 175 without hesitation. His confidence won't be shaken by what happens between Beterbiev and Bivol. Still, the real question is how well Benavidez's style will translate. His size advantage at 168 has been a huge part of his success. He won't have that at 175. And while his work rate is elite, he'll be facing opponents who can take his shots better and dish out heavier punishment in return. Against Morell, he'll get his first taste of that reality. If he dominates, the hype only grows. If he struggles, the road to a title shot suddenly looks more complicated.
Andrzej, может, не надо? Сколько делаем?
120.
2 раза?
Может, 3.
Я не смогу 3, да?
What happens on February 22nd will determine the immediate future of the division. Beterbiev could cement himself as an all-time great, or Bivol could flip the script and become the first undisputed light heavyweight champion in decades. But either way, Benavidez is watching, waiting, and preparing to throw himself right into the fire. Benavidez isn't short on confidence, and he has every reason to be. His undefeated record, his knockout power, and his relentless style make him one of the most feared fighters in boxing. But for all his bravado, even he has to acknowledge the limits of his dominance, at least for now. While he's eager to clear out the light heavyweight division, there's one man he openly admits would be too much for him, Alexander Usyk. It's an interesting admission and an honest one. Usyk, the reigning unified heavyweight champion, is a different kind of beast, one with a level of skill, movement, and experience that few in the sport can match. The size gap alone would be an issue, but it's Usyk's ability to control distance, pick apart opponents with precision, and dictate the pace of a fight that makes him such a nightmare matchup.
If you had have got the decision on the night and it had been tight, would you have given Artur a rematch?
Why I should think, what if this, what if that? We are in reality now.
Like you ask him about if he give me a rematch, yeah, I think no.
You don't think so?
No.
Why do you say that, Artur?
I think like
just your gut.
I know.
Still, that doesn't mean Benavidez is content to stay where he is. While a move to heavyweight seems unlikely, cruiserweight remains a real possibility. Usyk himself has flirted with the idea of moving back down for a legacy fight, and while the chances of him sticking around at 200 pounds long enough to face Benavidez are slim, the idea of Benavidez testing himself against top cruiserweights isn't far-fetched. The question is whether he'd have the same level of dominance at that weight as he does at 168 and hopes to have at 175. For now, though, his focus remains on conquering light heavyweight, and that means getting past David Morell first. Morell is no pushover. He's slick, powerful, and highly skilled. If Benavidez takes him lightly, he could be in for a rude awakening. But if he wins convincingly, the calls for him to face the Beterbiev Bivol winner will be impossible to ignore.
Dmitry, what is your message to Artur Beterbiev ahead of your rematch on February 22nd? Please look at him and tell him.
I don't have any messages. I'm not a postman. I'm an athlete. I will come to the ring and we will talk by action.
And that brings everything back to the rematch on February 22nd. Beterbiev and Bivol are two completely different fighters, but both present unique problems for Benavidez. If Beterbiev wins again, it means he once again walked through fire and imposed his will late in the fight. It would be a brutal, punishing kind of victory, the kind that should make any challenger think twice before stepping up. If Bivol wins, it means he adjusted, neutralized Beterbiev's power, and executed a perfect game plan. And for Benavidez, that would present a fascinating challenge, one that might even be more frustrating than Beterbiev's raw power. Benavidez thrives on overwhelming his opponents, but against a calculated, disciplined fighter like Bivol, would he be able to break through?
Is there one person that comes to mind?
No.
Bivol maybe, just to get the rematch. Bivol maybe.
Bivol is one of the guys I have my rematch now to.
Regardless of who wins, the landscape at 175 is shifting, and Benavidez is right in the middle of it. The Mexican monster is coming, and sooner or later, he'll have to face one of these champions to prove that his power, volume, and pressure can translate at the highest level. And when that happens, boxing might just get another unforgettable war. Is this how you see it? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. See you in the next one.